request for 3 additional residential units under current contract zone designation for Robert Modry, doing business as Modry Enterprises LLC for property located at 52 Water Street, Old Town, Maine. Tax map 26, lot 23, case number 1523. Is Mr. Modry, are you going to be speaking, or?
I'll just do a little bit of introduction for this. As you know, back in December of 2012, we did an expansion of 4 units for Mr. Modry, which took up about 50% of the first floor area, which left him his office, equipment area, storage, and then vacant space. Unfortunately, the economic climate that we're in, he hasn't found anyone to go in there. He would like to construct another 3 units within that 50% area, which will fill that area because he's gonna have storage, his laundry room. And that's what he's looking for. Fire department has been over and looked at the building, and Mr. Modry's spent quite a bit of expense to get his alarm system up to date so that not only the 4 units that he constructed, but the additional 3 would be covered. As you see in your memo, the parking spaces, he has plenty of parking there. And this is just an expansion of that. In looking at some of the other areas that along Main Street, and it may have been a special exception before my time, but we have some units down beyond Penobscot County that are fully apartment buildings, and that's within the same zone. So as you see, my recommendation was for approval, but
Well, of course, initially, the whole point of having the ground floor reserved as commercial, with, allowing for a mixed use.
Correct.
The upstairs were, the apartments. That would be probably the desired outcome from a planning point of view, is to have more commercial interest concentrated in the downtown. But it seems like not only in Old Town, but across the state, that towns, that isn't happening in the downtowns anyway.
Right.
So, anyone else have any comments or about that? It seems appropriate, but it's certainly been a long time coming.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we accept that, or expand whatever Dave had here for, because it was approved back in 12, I think it said?
Yeah, 2012.
yeah, December of 2012.
So I would say, just approve it again. I'd make a motion to do that.
We have a motion. Everybody understand the motion? How about a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question. It's a 2-story building, so there's nothing on the second story now?
The second story has 12 units on it, 12 residential units. And then the first floor was vacant except for the office, the storage area, and the equipment room and laundry. We allowed him the 4 units back in 2012. There's been no interest shown in the remainder of the. So this will give him 12, 16, 19 units.
Are those, all of those units currently occupied?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? And none opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Modry.
Thank you.
And if you want to come in, there is the contract that we had signed the last time.
Okay.
This just spells out the additional 3 units that you have to record at the registry, and
Okay, will do. Thank you.
thank
Good
you.
evening. Good evening. Item 4 is a request to change the zoning designation for 35 Brunswick Street, tax map 25, lot 1, from industrial I-1 to commercial business C1, and 211 Main Street, tax map 26, lot 11, from general residence R2 to commercial business C1. That is the case. It's case number 1524. After this, under new business, we want to further discuss uses of that property, but the item in front of us right now is to change that zoning designation to commercial business C1.
If I could just make one clarification, I didn't realize it today when John Rulo asked me to meet him at 50 Brunswick Street. That was actually 35 Middle Street.
Okay.
It just said 35 on there, and I saw Brunswick Street, so I wrote down
So that,
35 Brunswick. It is 35 Middle Street.
but it's still tax map 25 lot 1.
That is correct.
Okay, and tax map 26 lot 11, which is the old Town Canoe footprint,
Correct.
what we're talking about. I think we've defined it, hopefully.
What's the other lot on Main Street? I see the X, but I,
That was all part of Old Town Canoe. It was just,
Main Street?
it was a separate lot that,
It's the 3E building.
Oh, that's the three, oh, I see.
It was.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
that abuts, the Penobscot Federal Credit
Yeah,
Union.
okay, yep.
They were always used as one. It may have all been combined at one time, I don't know, but it shows this way on the tax map, and you have two zoning designations. The 3E lot was R2, and the rest of the 35 Middle Street was IND1. And we're looking to change that to C1.
So where is the I-1 zone down there? Is it just that property?
It is all of that property identified as tax map 1, or lot 1, is the IND. The current firehouse is also, public safety building is also IND1.
It is, okay.
The lot across the street, which I have not addressed in this, is R2, where the White Canoe building was.
Right.
Which
Okay.
was part of Old Town Canoe, but that was R2.
Mhm.
Everything surrounding that's R2, so I just left that alone for this point in time.
Just because I'm rusty on the definitions, and R2 allows businesses, because it's the Averill Insurance Agency.
It
and
does.
there's- And all those, so that's not impacted by residential. And the fire station is,
That is still IND1.
but what would that be in our codes now? What would that need to be in?
If you look through the ordinance, public facilities are allowed in basically every zone.
In every zone, okay.
Because you may have a pump station in an R1 and,
So this wouldn't change the public safety building to C1 then? That's gonna stay?
that will
what-
stay IND1.
And even if we did, public and governmental facilities are allowed if we did.
Correct.
But that's not part of this motion.
And they are allowed, as I say, in basically every.
Yeah.
So
every
if that
zone.
were made commercial, would that make that entire block from Middle Street to Stillwater Avenue, from Brunswick Street to Main Street, that's all commercial at that point? If we adopted that,
With the exception
of the
of,
fire station?
with the exception of the fire station and
What
the
about
Stillwater Avenue, that property that's on Stillwater Avenue.
The apartment building, is that
Yes.
part of that too?
And I can't tell you if that's C1 or not.
I mean, that's an apartment building, is that R2?
If we can recess for about 2 seconds, I can tell you.
I just thought it makes sense to have all of it be one
I-
zone, and if it didn't impact the uses currently or future uses, then it would be,
It could impact, it could make that Stillwater Avenue property legal non-conforming.
Yeah, I think we ought to just stick with,
well, I just hated to, make little pieces here and little pieces there, if it would make sense to have one block that was.
And again, if we can
consistent.
recess for 2 seconds,
Yeah,
I
no,
can
that's
tell you
fine.
that.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea.
okay, so. Because I would have to think that the lot that the apartment houses are on would be residential, I'm assuming, as well as, these other buildings going up to Stillwater Avenue. There's a residence here, and you got
But are
the
you allowed to
apartment
have-
buildings
Are you
here.
allowed to have commercial, are you allowed to have apartments in commercial spaces?
Yeah, well,
I just want to be consistent, that's all.
well, it does allow multifamily.
Right, right.
That lot in question, right here, that is R2.
Okay.
Everything, this is the I-1 that we're looking at.
Yep.
Here's the fire station.
Mhm.
We're looking to make all of this the same zoning as this.
Okay.
Does it make any sense to make that whole block? I mean, if we make the
It's
change
going to
that,
make this non-conforming,
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
and I really don't wanna do that.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that
Okay.
either, but
Okay.
I just thought it'd be simpler if we knew that that was all commercial, bang, and then.
Okay, well, what is still before us is the motion to change the properties designated from I-1 to C-1 and R-2 to C-1.
So do we allow business, commercial business in an I-1 zone?
No,
No.
No.
it's industrial.
Okay. I see no problem with it, but I was just trying to figure out if anybody wanted to come and manufacture something. It seems like an odd place to do it, but if they did,
It would be allowed, wouldn't it?
not if it becomes commercial.
No. I-1 is the most unattractive
Right.
use we want in the middle of a 7+ acre lot in the
Yep,
middle of
yep.
town.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We have plenty of space out at the airport for that type of use.
Have
We
you
don't
had
know what's
any
gonna
interest?
happen with the
Has
mill
any-
across the street all up Penny
And
Road.
there's much better facilities for trucks and unloading and all of
Exactly,
that sort of thing,
exactly.
so yeah, it's not
No.
I mean, we obviously, the Old Town Canoe Factory was shoehorned in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
By use, by practice.
And we still have the industrial use down at the corner of Brunswick and Maine where Phoenix Shoe,
Oh,
that's an industrial zone still. It's just the wave of the times.
mhm. I don't see any problem with it. I'd make a motion to redesignate that zone from a I-1 to a commercial business C1 as designated on property at 211 Main Street, tax map 26 lot 11, and,
It's now 35 Middle Street.
right, 35 Middle Street, tax map 25, lot 1?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think you covered it. Everybody understand the motion?
So isn't the
Second.
motion to make a recommendation to the city council?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
To have
The
it-
council has to be
To
the
change it.
deciding.
Yep. I'm sorry, yes.
Second that.
We have
Amend the motion.
motion and a second. We understand what we're doing, we're changing it to commercial. All in favor? And none opposed.
Has there been any interest in that lot at all? I mean, I'd hate to impede.
There has, which, I don't want to steal Ron's thunder.
Take away, I don't.
No,
if
there
you
has
can't-
been interest. Sewell Company is working on some
Okay.
designs for a full build-out of the property.
Okay.
It's conceptual at this time, but it's a
Yeah.
full build-out, which they're gonna be presenting in the near future. There has been, which leads us into the next segment.
Okay.
You wanna go to
Okay,
new
well,
business?
going on to new business, basically, well, why don't you tell us what the current proposal is and how big it is for that area? And also, can you tell us what part of that lot is this planned for?
It's, the current area that they're interested in is the corner. Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, was the corner, if you're facing Brunswick Street, to the right? Or do you want it to abut the fire station? I know that was conversation going back and forth.
And of course, we've only had preliminary discussions with the potential developer, and I think that they like the site, so I don't feel at this point it's gonna make a big difference to them whether they're on the right side or if they're closer to Middle Street.
But you're gonna be this way, it's gonna employ this part of the lot towards us here, or towards Middle Street.
Well, not necessarily, I mean, it's based on the concept that we're putting together now with Sewell, it might actually be a benefit to have them over, further down, Brunswick Street, or or?
To the
if you're
north,
looking at the lot
further
on
north
Main
on
Street,
Brunswick.
Oh,
More to the right.
okay. Well, I guess the only thing that just comes up just to, would be, if you're gonna cite that facility there, and if I understood it correctly, you're looking at 3 acres of the 8-acre lot?
Well, they're talking about 15 to 20 units, and again, we don't know exactly what the footprint would be for that. And that might be determined somewhat by the planning board regulations or the performance standards.
Well, the only thing I'm thinking of is to, for the portion of the property of the lot, now commercial, that you don't use, that we preserve as much as possible future options for that use.
And that's really the goal of our work right now with the engineer to
Right.
give us some concepts and,
Can you come up to the,
oh, shoot.
we were missing this.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to try to accomplish now, is to optimize the use of the lot, so that if these do come to fruition, that we can still have, sites that are large enough to really do something that's meaningful on the rest of the lot.
So I guess that you haven't even determined how big the area is or how it's gonna be laid out yet. But these are conceptual designs that Sewell is working on.
That's right, and again, these are just early discussions with the potential developer. I mean, it sounds encouraging, but we don't want to count our chickens yet.
Well, no, well, I guess if there's any guidance from the planning board, I think I'm speaking for the board when I say that we'd like to, take what you need, obviously, of that space, but maximize the potential for what remains to be developed in a commercial zone. David had a discussion with me before the meeting about whether this would be allowed in the C1. And looking at the commercial, I think you've all got this
The
sheet
handout.
here. This handout. What's allowed in the C1 zone includes, I think you said what, a hospital?
Yeah, a clinic or a hospital. It also allows for multifamily dwellings.
Right.
The proposed use that may go there is a hybrid of that.
Yeah, it's kind of potentially a medical facility, but at the same time.
More of a
multifamily-
dwelling.
more of a
I also
multifamily.
saw a reference to elderly housing.
I have
that
not,
list.
I have not seen that. I looked for that too.
I don't,
C, 6, sorry.
Next one down.
Yeah, number 6.
Number 6, subsection. That's the housing.
I,
But it references
well,
an
so
addenda.
again, it's another aspect of the proposed
Yeah.
use. If it was an assisted living type scenario, do we need to add some formal title to definitions or allowed uses, or with multifamily, elderly housing, clinic and hospital?
Wait, I think it's allowed. I mean, I don't think there's any,
That was a question that
Tension.
I had for you.
anybody else have any feelings about that one way or the other? I mean,
It's a funny thing about assisted living, it just takes so many forms. It's not necessarily elderly, and it's not
that's right.
necessarily a lot of
The
things.
handicapped people.
Yeah,
So I think between the clinic or hospital, elderly housing, and then multifamily dwelling, boy, I think we
Got
got
it
it
covered.
covered. It would be
And
my,
that was the only thing that,
Well, do we have definitions elsewhere in the ordinance that define clinic, hospital, and multifamily dwelling?
probably not. Nothing for clinic. Multiple dwellings we do, contains 3 or more dwelling units. Elderly housing we do. Multi-unit dwellings specifically designed for residential needs of elderly persons conforming to the requirements of the state and/or federal programs providing for housing of the elderly.
Yeah, I can't imagine if.
Nothing for a hospital because that's pretty
I
self-explanatory.
mean, if it specifically permits the elderly housing in that detail, I can't imagine someone who happens to be disabled but not elderly would be prohibited from, living there.
No,
I can't imagine that would be a, that would be a problem. So, I mean, I know we've got quite a bulldog here for a code enforcement officer, but I can't imagine him kicking him out. So, with that, I mean, there's no motion that needs to be made here.
No,
but-
it's more of a discussion, did we need to revisit this to add that as a specific use? As I always tell everybody, you can't foresee everything that would have to kind of take the general.
Well, would it interfere with the character of the neighborhood and with all of the elderly housing in downtown? I can't imagine that it would be a problem. I mean, if it was an ammunition factory or a hog farm, yeah, we'd have a problem with it.
Correct.
I just wanted to make certain in talking with the developer that they could look at this and feel assured that it is a permitted use and know if they have to jump through any hoops, what they are. So does the ordinance, I couldn't really tell, does it then tell you what the requirements would be, say in terms of parking per
Yes.
unit, that sort of thing?
And the parking as it stands right now, we don't have assisted living as a use. When they present their site plan, these folks will know what the parking requirements are. They can ask for a waiver for those standards, because a lot of these people will not have cars. So that could be downgraded.
So there's nothing cast in stone, there's flexibility.
You can have Sewell design it as they think it's appropriate for the space you've
Okay.
got. And then
And ask for
if there's a problem with not enough parking to meet the C1 requirements, we could consider at the site plan review a waiver of that requirement.
Okay.
Especially considering the fact that there's not gonna be as much traffic and some of the residents likely will not have vehicles.
We have to allow for staff, obviously, and we have to allow for guests.
Yeah.
Under the parking standards that we now have, we've got boarding and rooming house, one space for each guest room. Well,
Well,
it's
I
not.
I would advise Sewell or the developer, whoever's looking at this, to put together what they think would work.
I'm sure in
And-
their manuals,
and
there
then-
are standards for.
And then we'll see what we come up with, but I wouldn't stick them to an arbitrary, one parking space for every unit.
Correct.
And,
And not suggesting that would be a problem, I just didn't know whether or not it was a hard and fast requirement that they should adhere to when they develop a plan.
With anything with our site plan review, they always have the opportunity to ask for a waiver.
Okay.
They state their case, the board finds that it's reasonable.
And we have granted
grant that
numerous
waiver.
waivers for things like, shrubbery and green spaces and curb cuts and all. We've granted many waivers for when it was reasonable to do so.
So it really is true when I tell people that we are business friendly.
Well, we try,
These are the folks right here.
we try to be.
I was gonna say, we try to be.
I think we are. We don't say no very often.
No?
We often say, really? But not no.
I guess my only statement would be that if the developer wants or needs to see it more clearly defined, then I would recommend that message gets back to David, and
And then we can make
we
it-
will make the accommodations, because it's not clearly defined. And as a developer, they may, for funding or whatever, they may need it that way, and if so, then we'll take it up as a board and fix it appropriately. But we're actually going to seek out the advice of a Sewell-like company to tell us what would be appropriate for that sort of use, I assume, is we're not going to know that.
And there's many around that have been developed that they've followed standards.
The other possibility, which has happened many times in the past, is that a developer has come up with a conceptual plan. I mean, literally just drawn on a piece of poster paper, and they brought it in to us, and we had just an informal discussion. And then they went back and put together a formal site plan.
Okay.
And in fact, in our ordinance, there is an allowance for a preliminary site plan, which is quite formal. I'm not sure we need something quite that formal. If they want to come back and talk to us at a future meeting and just say, hey, here's what we've got in mind, do you see a problem? That would probably be wise.
Okay, yeah, that's good, and I know Dave already made that pretty clear when we met, that,
And I'm sure Dave could offer good guidance if you didn't want to bother to come to one of the future meetings, but we'd certainly be happy, I'm sure, speaking for the board,
Okay.
to discuss that.
well, that sounds good. Good, we'll try to reel him in.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
All set?
I believe so.
Unless you want to hang out.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any additional new business discuss, or any old business we need to? I guess one thing comes to my mind, Dave, is, I mean, are we going to be addressing the changes the
Absolutely.
comprehensive plan suggested to the ordinances?
Yep, we just got one of them done.
Oh. That's right.
Yeah, I'm slowly compiling and putting my stuff together, and I don't want to just keep doling it out. I'd like to do as much as I can at one time.
It's not none of those things were especially urgent, especially in the current climate. And if we had people lining up at your door, maybe it would be something we'd have to jump to, but.
But no, I've got, probably after the first year, we'll roll out a number of changes that we need to do.
Okay, well,
But this was one of them, to get the zone change there, and
yeah, no, and it seems to make sense. At this point, I know we kind of resisted that years ago, when he wanted to do it years ago, and we resisted it. But we were hoping for something different now. He ought to be able to use his property to the maximum extent possible. With that in mind, anybody have anything else? I hear
Motion to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn. Without objection, we are adjourned. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Oh, God.
I know she's probably sleeping in there.